next question is question number 25 and 21. The atomic number of element X is 1, 2, 12. What is the formula of the chloride of the X? Okay, so let's do the electronic configuration of the element X first. Element X has a 12 atomic number of 12. It's mean it has 12 electrons, right? So X12, 2, 8 and 2. It's mean it has 2 electron in the last shell. If it has 2 valence shell electron, it's mean it belongs to group 2. It is an alkaline earth metal. Okay, so if it belongs to group 2 of the periodic table, then it would have the charge X positive 2 on it. And we have to calculate the formula of the chloride of it. Chloride is from group 7 and they have the oxidation state of -1. So what do we do when the formula is being made? Then the charges are swapped like this. So the resultantly formula would be XCl2. So our answer would be XCl2. So the answer is B, right? Okay, so now move to question number 22. Element P, Q, R and S are in either group 1 or group 7, okay, of the periodic table. Mean we have to categorize them, these 4 elements P, Q, R and S in either group 1 or group 7. We have no other option. Okay, P is a liquid. Okay, group 1 is basically alkali metals, and alkali metals are solid at room temperature. So obviously P couldn't be the element of the group 1, while group 7 has fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, and we know that fluorine and chlorine are gases, bromine is a liquid, and iodine is a solid. So keeping this discussion in our mind, I think P is basically bromine, that is a liquid. So it belongs to group 7. Okay, Q is a gas. Again, it couldn't be the element of the group 1 because they are the metals and all of them are solid. So Q is either fluorine or it could be chlorine. Again, it belongs to group 7. Element R and S both form the basic oxide. If they form the basic oxide, then obviously it would be metal, because metallic oxide are basic in nature. So R and S, these both would be the element of group 1A. Both of them would be alkali metals. Okay, now element R has a higher melting point. R has a higher melting point than S. Okay, so we have concluded till here that R and S are both the element of the group 1. So what is the trend of the melting point in group 1? Basically in group 1, so here's the periodic table. In group 1, basically melting point decreases down the group. Okay, if R and S belongs to the group 1, then R should have R has a higher melting point. It's mean R is above in the trend. R is above in group 1A. Why? Because melting point decreases down the group. So if R has higher melting point, then it would be higher in the group. And S is in the bottom of the group. Now talk about the reactivity of the alkali metal. The reactivity of the alkali metal increases down the group, while the reactivity of group 7 decreases down the group. It decreases down the group, and in alkali metal it increases down the group. So we have concluded till here that R is above and S is below. It's mean that S would be more reactive. S is more reactive. Why? Because it is at the bottom of the group, and in alkali metal reactivity increases down the group. So the element which are at the bottom, they would be more reactive. While among fluorine and chlorine, chlorine is the one that is basically below fluorine, and in halogens reactivity decreases down the group. So fluorine is the one which is more reactive, and bromine is the one which is less reactive. So Q is a gas, so it could be either fluorine and chlorine. So it's mean Q is most reactive. So keeping this discussion in our mind, Q and S are the options which will give the vigorous reaction. Because for vigorous reaction, we need two elements which are more reactive. Okay. Now question number 23. The statement about the noble gases are listed. Their atom all have 8 electrons in their outer shell. No. This statement is wrong. Not all have 8 electrons. Helium is the one which has 2 electrons. So this statement is incorrect. They are unreactive because their outer shells are full. Yes, this statement is correct. They are diatomic. No, they are monoatomic. So D is the one which is correct. Okay, solid 1 and solid 2 are both elements. Solid 1 is not malleable. If solid 1 is not malleable, it's mean, and it's a solid as well, so it's mean it's not a metal. If it's not a metal, it must be alloy. What are alloys? Alloys are the mixture of metal with another metal or non-metal. Alright. Solid 2 is ductile. If solid 2 is ductile, then obviously it would be a metal. Now look at the statements. Solid 1 has good electrical conductivity only when molten. No, alloy is a mixture, so they are the conductor in all situations. So it's not when it is molten. So this statement is wrong. Solid 2 has good electrical conductivity only when molten. Again, this is a wrong statement. Metals are conductor even when they are solid. The layer of the ion in solid 1 can slide over one another. Not really. Why? Because in alloy there are the atoms of the different sizes, one metal and another metal or another non-metal even. So because of the different sized atoms present, it becomes difficult for the ions to slide over one another. So this statement is not true. The layers of the ion in the solid 2 can slide over one another. Yes, this is true, of course. In metals, layer of the ions, the positive ion, they can slide over each other. Okay, coming to our question number 25. When a piece of aluminium is placed in cold dilute hydrochloric acid, no reaction is observed initially. What is the reason for this? It's a fact. It's a factual question. Basically, what happens that when a piece of aluminium is being placed, and you know aluminium is a reactive metal, it forms a layer of oxide on it. It's a layer of oxide on it, aluminium oxide layer, which prevent it from further corrosion, which prevent it from reacting with any other thing. So according to this, option D is the correct one. Aluminium is coated with an oxide layer that prevent the acid getting to the metal. Okay. Next question. Question number 26. A piece of zinc is attached to the steel car to prevent it from rusting. Which statement is correct? Okay. Before looking at the option, just discuss one thing. When zinc is attached to some other metal, so basically what happens, zinc actually provide sacrificial corrosion. What is sacrificial corrosion? It sacrifices itself. It corrodes first and it protects the other metal to which it's surrounded. So if there is some other metal, for example X, and we have surrounded it with zinc like this, so zinc will corrode instead of X and it will prevent the X from corrosion. This process, this phenomena, it is called sacrificial corrosion. Okay, so now look at the statement. A piece of copper is more effective than zinc. No, because copper is less reactive than zinc, so it cannot rust instead of the zinc. So this statement is incorrect. Piece of magnesium is more effective. Okay, this is correct, because magnesium is less reactive than zinc. Again, this is wrong statement. Magnesium is above in the reactivity series and it is more reactive than zinc. Again, incorrect statement. The piece of the zinc provide a barrier around the entire steel car. Not really. The piece of zinc provides sacrificial protection. Yes, this is according to our discussion. Yes, it provides sacrificial protection to the steel car. So correct statement is option D. Coming towards next question. Which statement about the extraction of iron from hematite in the blast furnace is correct? Okay, let's look at the options. Coke is reduced. This statement is incorrect, because when we react coke with oxygen, it produces carbon dioxide and this process is oxidation. Coke is being oxidized. It is not being reduced. So this statement is incorrect. Hematite contains iron 3. Yes, this is a correct statement. Hematite is Fe2O3. It contains iron 3, which is reduced by carbon monoxide. Yes, this statement is correct as well. According to equation, you can see it reacts with carbon monoxide and it produces carbon dioxide and also molten iron like this. So I believe option B must be correct. Okay, next question. Water may contain many substances before it is purified for drinking. 3 substances are listed. Again, this is a factual question. When we need water for domestic purpose, then it must not include harmful microbes and insoluble solids. So these are the 2 things which need to be removed for domestic water supply. So option 2 and 3 should be the correct one. C is the correct option. Okay, a fact again. Dry air is a mixture of gases. 99% of the mixture is nitrogen and oxygen. Yes, it is correct, because almost 78% nitrogen and almost 21% oxygen. What is the higher abundance in the remaining 1%? So again, it's a factual question, as I said. It's argon. There's a table in your textbook in the chapter Environmental Chemistry where the composition of the air is being given. You may consult with that table and you can learn it for such questions. Next question. The statement about alkanes is correct. Okay, so we are talking about alkanes. Ethane react with chlorine in an addition reaction. No, this statement is incorrect. Ethane react with chlorine and this reaction is called substitution reaction, not addition reaction. Addition reactions are the property of the alkenes instead. So this is wrong. Propane has a higher boiling point than butane. Basically, propane contains 3 carbon and butane contains 4 carbon. So butane melting point of the butane must be higher than propane. Why? Because the melting point increases with the molecular mass. So this statement is incorrect. The molecules of the alkane that contain 99 carbon atom has 200 hydrogen atom. Okay, for this we have to substitute these values in the general formula of the alkane. So general formula of the alkane is CnH2n plus 2. So if C is 99, H is 2n, 99 multiplied by 2, that is 198, and plus 2, it will be 200. So this is the correct one. This statement is correct. We can look at the fourth statement as well. There are 3 isomers for the formula butane. Incorrect statement. Butane has only two isomers. The one in which 4 carbon are in a straight line like this, and the one in which 1 carbon is being attached in a chain. So it has only 2 isomers. This statement is incorrect. Next question. Compound X is an alcohol containing only 3 carbon atoms. So it has only 3 carbon atoms. Okay, and it's an alcohol. So what would be the formula of X? Further in the question, examiner is telling us about the general formula of the alcohol as well. So keeping this formula in our mind, and as X has 3 carbons, so the general formula of X would be C3H7OH. Alright. And general formula of Y because compound Y is again an alcohol and it contains 4 carbon. So it would have formula C4H9OH. I made these formulas according to this general formula which is provided to us in the question. Okay, which row shows the number of the structural isomers? The number of the structural isomers of the compound X and Y. This is a one part of the question. We have to find out the structural isomers of these. And then among these structural isomers, we have to select the ones that are unbranched alcohol. Alright, this is a lengthy question. So we have to find out the isomers, the structural isomers of X and Y, and then we have to eliminate the one which are unbranched. Sorry, which are branched. So isomers of X. We can put all 3 carbons in a straight line like this, and then hydroxyl group would be attached with the central carbon like this. These are the only 2 possibilities of the structural isomers of the X. Now talking about the structural isomers of Y, again we can put all 4 carbons in a straight line like this and attach hydroxyl group with them. Then hydroxyl group would be attached with the second carbon, and a tertiary alcohol will be formed. This is the second isomer. Okay, so the third isomer would be we can put these 2 carbons like this in a branch. This is the third one, and the fourth one would be we can make the tertiary alcohol like this. Now you can see that these 2 alcohols, these are branched. These are branched. Can you see like this? So this carbon is in branch. again like this. So these two carbons are in branched, so we cannot include these two isomers. So according to this discussion, X has two isomers and Y also has two isomers, so B is the correct one. Which two compounds react together to form this thing? What is this? This is an ester. How could we know? From the function group it has. Okay, so let's write down the formula for this. This is CH3, CH2, C double bond O, O and CH3. We know that the first part of the ester belongs to the acid and the last part it belongs to alcohol. So if we break down it from here, what will happen? CH3, CH2, C double bond O and an OH from the water will be attached with it. While with alcohol, CH3O and H from the water will be attached with it. So what is the name for this carboxylic acid? It is a 3-carbon carboxylic acid. So its name would be propanoic acid. And its name would be methanol. Why? Because it contains only 1 carbon. So look at our options, propanoic acid and methanol. D is the correct one. 3 statements are about fuels are listed. Fossil fuel include coal, natural gas and wood. This statement is wrong. Wood is not the part of it. Petroleum is a mixture of hydrocarbon. Yes, this statement is correct. Naphtha is used as a chemical feedstock. Yes, it's a fact again. It's correct. So, the correct statement is option D. Coming towards 34. Which statement about propene is correct? Okay. So what is propene actually? Propene is an alkene basically. It's an alkene. Propene is saturated hydrocarbon. We just have discussed that it is an alkene and alkenes are unsaturated. They are not saturated. So this statement is correct. Propene is the 3rd member of the homologous series. No, it is the 2nd member of the homologous series. The first is ethene and the next is propene. Propene react with bromine in a substitution reaction. Not really. Propene react with bromine in an addition reaction. The reactions of alkenes are addition reaction. So this statement is incorrect again. Propene react with hydrogen in the presence of nickel catalyst to produce propane. Yes, this statement is the correct one. Propene is C3H6. It reacts with hydrogen in the presence of nickel and some heat and it produces C3H8, that is a propane. So this is the reaction, and if we show the bonds like this, so what happens? One hydrogen, this bond is being broken, only one bond is here, and one hydrogen is attached with it, and one hydrogen is attached with it, so it will form this thing C3H8. All right, coming towards question number 35. Copper 2 oxide react with the dilute ethanoic acid. Okay. Before looking at the option, let's write our own equation. Copper 2 oxide is CuO. It reacts with ethanoic acid, so CH3COOH. It will produce water, H2O. Hydrogen will be removed from here, oxygen would be here, and we need 2 hydrogen. So in order to balance it, I need to put 2 over here, and resultantly CH3COO negative ethanoate ion, acetate ion will be from here, and Cu from here. They will CH3COO minus 1 and Cu positive 2 from here. They will be forming CH3COO twice Cu, copper acetate. So let's match our equation with the given option. So D is the correct one according to our equation. D exactly matches with our equation, so this is the correct one. Question number 36. The diagram shows the repeating unit of a polymer. Which row shows the monomer and the type of polymerization that is being involved? Okay, so this isomer is this polymer is basically of an hydrocarbon, and it must involve an alkene. So when two alkenes are polymerized, so this reaction is addition. This polymerization is addition polymerization. So keeping this thing in our mind, of course B and D couldn't be our option. We have to choose between A and C. All right. So let's make the polymer. It is CH, H, C, H, CH2 and CH3. When we have to make a monomer from the polymer of an addition polymer, then we just drop these continuous bonds and we put a double bond in between, because addition polymer are formed by alkenes, by unsaturated hydrocarbons. So I will put a double bond. So this monomer exactly matches with option A. You can see this H, carbon, carbon, hydrogen, hydrogen, again double bond, hydrogen, hydrogen, carbon, and it is C2H5. If I will combine it, this is C2H5. So it exactly matches with this. So I believe A is the correct one. Okay, question number 37. Which piece of apparatus is used to measure the volume of the acid? We have to find out the volume of the acid. required to neutralize 25 cm cube of alkali in a titration. Okay, so you should keep one thing in mind when we are performing the titration, then the thing which is of known volume, like this known volume, it is always put in conical flask. Always, known volume is always put in conical flask. And the other apparatus that we use is burette here, that is burette. So if alkali is here in conical flask, because known volume is always in the conical flask, then what would be in the burette? It would be acid, of course. So B is the correct one. The acid should be put in burette. Question number 38. A mixture contains two solids, X and Y, and no other substance. X and Y are both soluble in water. They are both soluble in water. So the student separate X and Y using two steps. Step 1. The student stirred the mixture into a beaker of the cold water. What is the second step? Okay, as they both are soluble, so we cannot use filtration here. Why? Because filtration is used when one thing is soluble and the other is insoluble. And as both of them are soluble, so filtration is not our option. Okay, same goes with distillation, because distillation is used to separate a liquid from solid. And according to the examiner, both are the solid. So C is not our option. Now B. Crystallization again. Crystallization is not the correct one. Why? Because it is used to make crystals. So, in my point of view, chromatography A is our correct option. Question number 39. Solid J contains cation and chloride ions. The aqueous solution of the J is colorless. If it is colorless, then it's not transition element. Not transition element. Two separate samples of the solution are tested. Aqueous sodium hydroxide is added to the first sample to produce the white precipitate. If white precipitate are being obtained from sodium hydroxide, then it's mean Al positive 3, Zn positive 2 and Ca positive 2 could be present, because all of them produces white precipitate with sodium hydroxide. Alright. Aqueous ammonia is added to the second sample and it produces the white precipitate as well. Now we can narrow down our options and Al positive 3 and either zinc positive 2 could be present, because calcium positive 2 do not form the white precipitate with aqueous ammonia. Okay, so it either contain Al positive 3 or Zn positive 2. Alright. Which statement about J is correct? Okay. The cation in J must be Al positive 3. No, this couldn't be the option, because we just have discussed it could either be Al positive 3 or Zn positive 2 according to the given information. So it's not must Al positive 3. It could be either Al positive 3 or Zn positive 2. So this option is not correct. The cation in J must be Fe positive 2. Not at all. We just have discussed there's no transition element. It is forming the white precipitate. In case of Fe positive 2, green precipitate are obtained. So this is not the correct one. When dilute nitric acid and then aqueous barium nitrate is added to an aqueous solution of the J, white precipitate is formed. Not at all, because when barium nitrate is formed and according to the examiner chloride ion are present, so it will form barium chloride and it will not form the white precipitate. So this option is incorrect again. When dilute nitric acid and aqueous silver nitrate are added to the aqueous solution of the J, white precipitate is formed. Silver nitrate, yes, this is the possibility, because when silver nitrate is added with chloride ion, so it will form AgCl and it has the white precipitate. So D is the correct one. Alright. Coming towards the last question of the paper. Solid Q react with dilute hydrochloric acid, producing a gas that turns lime water milky. If a gas is turning lime water milky, then this gas must be carbon dioxide gas. And if this is so, then solid Q must contain a carbonate, because only the carbonate, when react with hydrochloric acid or any of the acid, they produces carbon dioxide gas. Okay. Warming solid Q with aqueous sodium hydroxide produces a gas that turns damn red litmus paper blue. Okay, so a gas that turns a damn red litmus paper blue, this gas is ammonia for sure. This gas is ammonia. And if solid Q producing ammonia, when it reacts with an alkali, then it must contain ammonium ion. Alright, any of carbonate with acid produces carbon dioxide gas, and any of the ammonium salt on reacting with an alkali produces ammonia gas. This is our concept. So for sure solid Q contains ammonium ions and carbonate ion, and if this is so, we can find out the formula easily. NH4 positive 1 and CO3 minus 2. So this 2 will move here, this 1 will move here. Resultantly our formula would be NH4 twice CO3, and the name would be ammonium carbonate. This leads us towards our correct option. So the correct option for this question is A. Thank you so very much. Allah Hafiz.